I never believed in Bigfoot. To me, it was just a silly legend concocted by people who had watched too many late-night horror movies. But that all changed one fateful weekend in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. Just like any typical camping excursion with my buddies, we set out, craving an escape from the hustle of city life, yearning to immerse ourselves in nature's embrace. Yet, unbeknownst to us, we stood on the brink of a harrowing encounter that would shatter our tranquility and plunge us into a realm of terror surpassing our darkest imaginings. As we ventured deeper into the forest, the towering trees enveloped us in their ancient embrace, their gnarled branches reaching out like fingers of some primal entity. The sunlight filtered through the thick canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. With each step, the crunch of twigs beneath our feet echoed in the quiet stillness, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Upon finding a secluded clearing, we began the ritual of setting up camp, our laughter mingling with the sounds of nature around us. Yet, as we worked, a subtle shift in the atmosphere became palpable. It was as though the very air around us had thickened, carrying with it an unsettling sense of foreboding. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were trespassers in a realm where we were unwelcome guests. The forest seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, a primal force that lay dormant beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. Despite the beauty of our surroundings, an inexplicable unease settled over me, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to stand on end. Little did I know this sense of disquiet was merely the prelude to a chilling revelation, one that would soon shatter the tranquility of our camping trip and plunge us into a nightmarish ordeal beyond our wildest imagination. As night descended upon our campsite, a palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere, as if the very fabric of the forest had been woven with threads of unease. The once serene woods now seemed to teem with an undercurrent of malevolence, manifesting itself through eerie whispers that danced on the edges of our perception. At first, the signs were subtle, a rustle in the underbrush, a twig snapping in the distance. Yet as darkness deepened its hold, these innocuous sounds morphed into something far more sinister. Low, guttural growls reverberated through the trees, each one sending a shiver of dread coursing down my spine. I desperately tried to rationalize the unsettling noises, attributing them to the wind or the nocturnal activities of forest creatures. But deep down, an insidious intuition gnawed at my consciousness, insisting that these disturbances were far from natural. As the hours stretched into days, the sense of unease only intensified, each night fraught with an escalating symphony of ominous sounds. Shadows danced in the flickering firelight, their movements taking on a sinister quality that seemed to mirror the darkness lurking just beyond the edge of our campsite. With each passing moment, it became increasingly apparent that we were not alone in the forest, that something malevolent watched and waited, biding its time until the moment was ripe to reveal itself. And as the days turned into a harrowing blur of uncertainty, we found ourselves inexorably drawn into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. As the crackling flames cast eerie shadows around our campsite, a tense silence settled over us, thick with anticipation and unease. Suddenly, a disturbance in the darkness caught our attention, a rustle of leaves, a faint footfall echoing through the stillness of the night. Peering out from the safety of our tent, we glimpsed a shadowy figure moving stealthily through the trees, its form shrouded in the cloak of night. With bated breath, we watched as it drew closer, its movements deliberate and purposeful. Then, without warning, it emerged into the clearing, a towering silhouette against the backdrop of darkness, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly luminescence. We froze, transfixed by the sight before us. At first, it seemed merely curious, tentatively approaching our makeshift shelter with an air of cautious intrigue. Its massive frame loomed over us, casting a daunting presence that sent a chill coursing through our veins. With a mixture of fascination and fear, we watched as it reached out a massive hand, its fingers grazing the fabric of our tent with a gentle touch. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, it began to toy with us, pushing against the canvas with a strength that belied its size. Each push sent shockwaves rippling through the flimsy structure, threatening to collapse the fragile barrier between us and whatever lurked beyond. With each passing moment, the tension in the air grew thicker, suffocating us in its grip. and just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, the creature retreated into the shadows, leaving us trembling in its wake. Yet, as the night wore on, it returned again and again, its presence a constant reminder of the peril that surrounded us. With each visit, its actions grew more aggressive, its intentions more sinister. It seemed as though it took pleasure in tormenting us, reveling in the fear that it instilled within our hearts. And as we huddled together in the darkness, praying for dawn to break and release us from our torment, we couldn't help but wonder what other horrors awaited us in the depths of the forest. With our hearts pounding in our chests, we watched in terror as the creature loomed closer, its massive form casting a shadow over us. I felt the urge to run, to scream, but fear rooted me to the spot. Around me, my friends were frozen in terror, their faces pale in the flickering firelight. The forest erupted with a deafening roar echoing through the trees as Bigfoot unleashed its primal fury. Rocks came hurtling through the air, crashing against the fabric of our tents with bone-shaking force. Panic seized us as we scrambled out of our shelters, desperate to escape the onslaught. With each thunderous impact, the creature's rage became palpable, its primal cries piercing the night air. We fled into the darkness, the sound of Bigfoot's furious onslaught echoing behind us, driving us deeper into the heart of the forest. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs threatened to give out beneath us. But no matter how fast we ran, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. Hours seemed to blur together as we stumbled blindly through the forest, each of us grappling with our own terror. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out to ensnare us in their grasp. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, we stumbled into a small clearing, our breath coming in ragged gasps. We collapsed onto the ground, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. And then, as if by some cruel twist of fate, we heard it, the sound of heavy footsteps approaching from the darkness. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that our ordeal was far from over. With trembling hands, I reached for a nearby branch, ready to defend myself against whatever horror lurked in the shadows. But as the figure emerged from the darkness, I felt my blood turn to ice. It was Bigfoot. The creature stood before us, its massive form silhouetted against the dawn sky. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its bared teeth gleamed in the pale light. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as we stared into the creature's gaze, paralyzed with fear. And then, with a roar that shook the very ground beneath us, it lunged forward, its massive claws outstretched. And though we eventually emerged from the forest, battered and bruised but alive, we knew that we would never truly escape the horror of that night. For deep in the heart of the Pacific Northwest, the legend of Bigfoot lives on, a terrifying reminder of the darkness that lurks within the untamed wilderness. I'm going to entitle this one, Laundramat Dogman. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows over the deserted campground, my friends and I huddled around the crackling campfire. The smell of hamburgers sizzling on the BBQ filled the air, mixing with the scent of pine trees and the distant aroma of wild raspberries. We had been looking forward to this camping trip for months, but now, as darkness enveloped us, an inexplicable sense of unease settled in. Earlier that day, we had spent hours swimming in the cool waters of the nearby lake, laughing and splashing until the sun began its descent. But now, as the flames danced and flickered, our laughter seemed hollow against the backdrop of the silent woods. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that gripped me, focusing instead on the game of chess we had set up beside the fire. But even the distraction of strategy couldn't dispel the growing tension in the air. As we sat in uneasy silence, a sudden rustling from the darkness beyond the campsite made us all jump. My friend's dog, usually fearless and boisterous, whimpered and cowered beside me, his hackles raised. "Probably just a raccoon," one of my friends said, attempting to sound nonchalant as he stoked the fire. But his voice wavered slightly, betraying his own nerves. But it wasn't a raccoon. It was something much worse. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and menacing, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. It was the legendary Dogman, a creature whispered about in hushed tones around campfires and in the local laundromat. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrambled to my feet, my friends echoing my movements as we backed away from the creature. The smell of burning meat hung heavy in the air, mixing with the acrid stench of fear. With a guttural growl, the dogman lunged forward, its claws glinting in the firelight. We screamed and scattered, running blindly through the trees as the creature pursued us relentlessly. We stumbled through the darkness, branches tearing at our clothes and thorns scratching our skin. Behind us, the highway loomed like a beacon of safety, but it felt impossibly far away. Finally, gasping for breath, we burst through the trees and onto the deserted road. We didn't stop running until we reached the nearest town, where we collapsed in exhaustion and disbelief. To this day, we never returned to that campground, and we never spoke of the terrifying encounter again. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the campfire crackles in the darkness, I can't help but wonder if the dogman still lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike again. And that, my friends, is the true story of the Grand Champion of Terror, a tale to chill you to the bone and haunt your dreams for eternity.